Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Retail Insider's Senior News Editor. Joining me today is Sean McCormick, who is payment data expert at Moneris. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Mario.
Well, let's talk about some surveys that Angus Reid has done on Canadians and spending habits. In general, Sean, what are you noticing about the spending habits of Canadians these days?
Well, it was interesting. We started working with Angus Reid last year on a co-sponsored report to kind of try to understand where consumer spending was going, because we see the data in all of our transactions across the country. We process 800 transactions a second at peak, and so that tells us what's happening in real time. It doesn't tell us what people are thinking, and those can be two very different things. So we thought last summer, when we kicked off the partnership, we thought it'd be really interesting to see how these two worlds would collide. And I'll tell you, we've seen some really interesting trends, as coming out of the pandemic, just how people were thinking about their money and how they were spending and how their spending habits were changing. And then now in this inflationary period, we've seen a bit of a reversal of a lot of the year-over-year trends that we started to see last year.
So are Canadians cutting back on their spending? I think we see so many challenges out there. The economy, the cost of living has gone up, prices have gone up, and in a lot of things. There's also fears of recession and all that type of stuff. How's that impacting, the amount of money that people are taking out of their wallets and spending these days?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mario. So that we look at spending from basically two different lenses. One is the number of transactions that we see within spending categories, and then we also see dollar volume. So like how much money are people spending within the different categories. So as inflation grows, naturally you're going to be spending more money on the goods that you buy. And as inflation grows, or as inflation rises, consumers may be compelled to shop less, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while the dollar volume might grow because the cost of the goods in that basket is growing, the number of goods in that basket could be going down, or the number of times I go to that store to buy things might be going down. So I'll give you a good example. So apparel, for example, so that's clothing stores. Year over year, percent volume change, it's down 3%. So that's dollar volume is down 3% year over year. Transaction volume is down 7%. So think about that for a second. So people are spending a bit less on apparel year over year, but they're actually going to stores a lot less, if that makes sense. So it's down 3% in dollar volume, down 7% in transaction volume. Another example would be entertainment. So dollar volume down 4%, transaction volume even. So people are going out to these events, but they're spending less when they get there. They're going out just as frequently, but they're spending less when they get there.
So do you think the Canadians are looking at different ways to stretch their dollar, and what kind of ways are they looking at?
Yeah, well, so a grocery store is a perfect example. So what we started seeing, Mario, last year when we first conducted this study, is we saw that that the average transaction size at grocery stores, despite the year-over-year grocery inflation of between 8 and 12%, I think is when it peaked. So despite the fact that the cost of the groceries was going up about 10% on average, the average transaction size was flat. It wasn't going anywhere. So a couple of ideas what people were doing. is they were substituting, so the substitution effect. So instead of buying that, that high end brand of laundry detergent, for example, maybe they were substituting it for the lower end laundry detergent. You're still washing your clothes, you're just spending less money doing it. Another thing they might have been doing and continue to do is buy fewer items at a time. So I don't know what things are like in your household, but I know I talked about this concept with my wife, and she said, my wife does all the grocery shopping, and she said, yeah, I used to buy 3 heads of lettuce when I went to the grocery store, and one of them might have gone bad in the fridge. Now I'm buying 2 heads of lettuce when I go to the grocery store, so I don't take the chance of that third one going bad. So humans are very adaptable beings, right? We always adapt to a situation.
True.
And grocery is a perfect example of that, where we're still managing to put groceries in our fridge. It's always going to be a priority. We need to eat, but we're just being a lot smarter about how we're doing it.
Yeah. Anything else, Sean, that struck your interest from the survey?
Yeah, so there's one of the questions in the survey was, if you had $1,000 less, what would you cut back on? And options were travel, groceries, home furnishings, vehicle maintenance, clothing, specialty items or hobbies, entertainment, and restaurants. And we asked the same question a year ago, and we asked it again today. And there was a large variance in a couple of categories. So let's stay on the grocery topic. So a year ago, 46% of respondents said if they had $1,000 less, they would cut back on groceries. Now, 12% of people said groceries. So what that tells me is that people already cut back on groceries. They can't cut back anymore. So they've made those substitutions. They've made the substitutions. They're buying fewer heads of lettuce. So they've already done that. So they don't have as much wiggle room there anymore. Another category where we saw the same effect was vehicle maintenance and updates. So last year, 35% of people said that if they had $1,000 less, they would cut back on vehicle maintenance and updates. This time around, 17% said that. So half as many people listed that as one of the things they would cut back on. Now, conversely, on the other side of the coin, we saw entertainment outings reverse that trend. So last year, 31% of people said if they had $1,000 less, they would cut back on entertainment. This year, 56% said that they would cut back on entertainment. So what that could infer is that people didn't cut back on entertainment last year. That was not one of the items that they were considering cutting. Now that the rubber has met the road, they've already cut back on groceries. They've already cut back on vehicle maintenance. Now they need to cut back on entertainment. It was the same trend, by the way, for restaurants. It was 28% of people said they cut back on restaurants last year. 52% said they would cut back on restaurants this year. So to summarize, I think the message here is that people made some really tough decisions last year, and now the decisions might be getting tougher because they have fewer places to cut.
And I guess it's the old saying, right, about the difference between a need and a want.
Correct. 100% correct. I think we're getting now in the second year of let's call it hyperinflation. We need to keep looking for places to make those dollars go further. Now, fortunately, the price of oil has come down a little bit, so people aren't spending $2 a liter at the pumps in most parts of the country. However, we are seeing the price of gas go up with the carbon tax, et cetera. So consumers only have so much room to maneuver there. You still need to get around. I still need to drive my kid to hockey practice, from downtown Toronto out to Vaughan. I can't do that on transit, so I have to put gas in my car, and that's one of those tough decisions.
Exactly. Well, thanks very much, Sean, for joining us today.
Thanks, Mario.
All right, that was Sean McCormick, who is a payment data expert at Moneris. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Senior News Editor at Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.